Och det är varmt och skönt. Och låg en annan flicka där nere. Vi låg där bredvid varandra alldeles naken och solade oss. Vi låg där och tittade fram och kikade ut på landskapet, havet och sol. Och så lustigt liksom. Det är två pojkar som hittar på sakta flickan. Med Katarina. Alla de tittar alltså. Vänder sig om på rygg. Och en sån underlig känsla. Jag ville springa upp hela tiden och på min badkappa. Men jag var kvar med låg. Jag är så generad och jag vill ha mig liksom. Hela tiden är Katarina med mig. Med sina bröst och sina tjocka lår. Börjar hon snussa lite för sig själv. Och så vet hon vad hemskt det är. Sen är en av dem, han som var vit i höst. Han kom fram till oss och sätter han sig på huvudet bredvid Katarina. Så låtsas han upptöra sin ena fot och börjar peta sig med den foten. Jag känner nattskås. Plötsligt så hörde jag att Katarina sa: Du, ska du inte kolla ett tag? Så plötsligt så var han ovanpå henne. Hjälpte honom till rätta och höll honom fort. Alla pojkarna var så vackra. Jag hörde Katarina viskla i örat på honom och skratta. Jag hörde hans ansikte hade sin bild. Så öppnade kjolen. Han böjde sig ner och började kyssa henne på ryggen. Sen så tog han hans huvud med bägge händerna och gav honom sin bröst.
sadness. Love is my experience. I love myself. I am free from anger. I am free from sadness. Love is my experience. I love myself. I am free from anger. I am free from sadness. Love is my experience. I love myself. I am free from anger. I am free from sadness. Love is my experience.
feel the heat on your skin? Can you feel the heat on your skin? Can you feel that fire? Can you feel the temperature rising? Can you feel that? Hot.
Let us pray. Hello, and welcome back to the annual Harmony Records label nights. My name is Westdale, and I'm here today to moderate this panel discussion. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the music industry, different experiences, and just, I think, community values in general. I'm super excited to be here today, and I have a lot of really awesome people sitting here with me. And I guess we can just dive into it. So the first guest that I'd like to ask a question to is Kia. Kia comes from Australia and has recently moved to Berlin, so has made it over to the dark side, I guess you could say. And I wanted to open it up with just a little bit of background, I guess. And I phrased it as, what impresses you the most about the scene in your home country?
Okay. Hi. Yeah, I'm Kia. So yeah, I did just move here to Berlin a couple months ago. But I guess yeah, connected to the question, I'll be living here, but I'm always going to be the most connected to the scene there. I feel very passionate about it. It's a very special community that we have there. I think part of it is it's thriving because it's so far away and like we really support each other. It's like it's not a competitive scene.
Yeah.
And I think like especially like I mean since the 90s and probably earlier there's been like a rave scene in Melbourne, but COVID kind of like was this moment in time where we couldn't have internationals and people had a lot of spare time. So a lot of artists started popping up and we just like had to focus our lens on like what was around us, and then everyone kind of realized like I think people kind of already knew, but it was like this crazy like boom in like emerging artists from Melbourne.
Yeah, so does the scene really concentrate in Melbourne, I guess?
I mean, I live there now. I grew up in Sydney, and like
Okay.
Sydney has a really cool scene. There's also I can't speak for all the scenes because like in Australia, I don't know exactly what the percentage is, but like over 50% of the population of the whole country, which is obviously huge, is populated on the East Coast in the capitals, in like mainly Sydney and Melbourne, but also Brisbane, which is further north. And then there's Adelaide, which is like kind of in the middle at the south, and Hobart and Tasmania. And then there's Perth, which is like a whole other thing, but I've only played there once. And they've got like, they produce amazing talent, like Rosa Terenzi comes from Perth, and like Guy Contact.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mike Midnight, like there's so many cool people from there. So I think it's that. It's like, and Perth is even more isolated. During COVID, like you weren't allowed to leave Western Australia for 2 years. So the whole, like Perth was isolated even just from the rest of Australia. And that definitely plays into it. But yeah, and I think a lot of it is like the nature and the surroundings and like connecting with the environment there, because Australia is like a really, like we call it a nanny state. It's a heavily regulated place, and like as in most cities in the world, gentrification is just like making clubbing harder and harder. So when I moved to Melbourne like 8-9 years ago, when I was just 18, there was a bunch of sick clubs, and now there's far less, but it like created like it pushed what was already existing a little bit, but like in Sydney as well, like a DIY illegal like outdoor rave, even warehouse rave sometimes as well, but that kind of scene. And like that side of it always then ends up being really community focused, because it's like, you know, there's no money involved. It's like people that really want to be there, really want to be playing, really want to be part of it. The people that are throwing the parties, you've got to be really committed. So
And
yeah.
do a lot of those artists now interact with the European scene, or do you find that the Australian scene also stays pretty insular?
Definitely in the last like year or two, like since COVID kind of chilled out, I'm like super proud of all my friends that like put music out on my label. Like a lot of them are
Nice.
doing their first tours here, and like yeah, like I'm not just Animalia, my label, but other labels as well have been like good platforms for people to then like branch out overseas. Because there's a lot of crossovers. Like we were chatting before about how there's this weird link between like Canada and Australia and like the music scenes, and also yeah, Amsterdam, Berlin, like Prague, of course. Animalia and Harmony was a dangerous duo in the best way. So yeah, it's definitely like it's cool though because I think the sound has become kind of distinctive, but it's spreading now in a way that I haven't really. I mean, I'm pretty young, so I can't speak for like the scene for decades, but right now it feels like the Australian sound is like making it its own way in Europe, definitely.
And
Slowly into America as well, and Canada for sure.
and that shows through your label as well. I guess you carry that sound with you.
Yeah, I'm
on
lucky
your
that like I'm
travels.
now touring, but like I see my DJing as more of like an ecosystem with the label. It's not really about me. It's more about like the whole thing. So
Great.
yeah.
Yeah, nice. Nice. I kind of wanted to expand on that topic a little bit with Alice, with Lychee. And I kind of was wondering, I guess, so you came up through the New York scene. And I was wondering, was it something about that local scene that first urged you to look and kind of interact internationally? How did that process slowly come forward?
Yeah, so I'm Elise Lychee. I actually kind of came up, I would say, through the Boston scene, which is north of New York. It's like
Cool.
a much smaller scene, and it's one of those scenes where you're kind of throwing nights for like the same, essentially like 40 people. Like the same people are coming out to everyone's different things, and it's maybe similar to how Kia was saying, like everyone's kind of supporting each other because it is so small. And I was going back and forth to New York for quite a while, so now I've lived in New York for 5 years, but thinking about the international side of things is interesting because I feel like I was always very of the internet, like growing up and when I was in Boston, because that's how you kind of break out of if you're in a small scene like that, you can find a lot of like interesting people and things that way. I've always been kind of in online communities. At that time, it was probably like Facebook groups and Twitter before those went totally down the path that they're on today. Today, I feel like I spend a lot of time in like Discord communities and things like that. So, yeah, I think in a way it's kind of just a weird time because I think what is local is very in question to me. Like, I feel like there are a lot of small pockets or scenes that are kind of like I go to certain festivals in the U.S. like Sustained Release or Honcho Campout or things like that, and I see a lot of the same people. Or even living in New York, I feel like going to the club nowadays that I work at and DJ at sometimes on any given weekend, I'm seeing a lot of people who aren't based in New York. So in that sense, yeah, I feel like I've just kind of always connected with things from outside the scene where I'm in. But I did initially, I think my first international trip was that had music involved was to Berlin, because at the time it was like 2016 and I was very into techno at that time, and something that was really interesting to see about that coming from the US. Like I think in the US now things are a little more like techno is now a more viable thing. You can have like a club in New York that has techno playing every weekend and is like a huge room and you can fill that room, but at that time it felt like a much more niche interest. And so it was really interesting going to Berlin and seeing like all these giant clubs and something that was kind of like defined as culture and was just much more viable, and kind of seeing the ups and downs of that, because I think in a way it can be really great, but it can also kind of become a commodity, and it can become a thing where people only want to hear a certain kind of music and kind of shut down when they hear anything else. So it made me appreciate some of the more smaller DIY scenes, both in the US and other places. Like when I went to Dresden before the pandemic, I had a really lovely time, and it felt like a really open-minded, cool scene. So
Nice.
and there's of course great stuff in Berlin too, but some of it is very dogmatic at times, I think.
And is there still quite a lot happening in Boston, or have some of those key players now moved on to other projects?
Yeah, it's a tough one because I haven't actually been back for probably over a year now to Boston from New York. And for a while, I was going back and playing regularly. But I think over the pandemic, just so many of the people I know personally moved away, or a lot of people moved to New York or other cities. So there are definitely, it's a hard city in general to make things happen. Like clubs close at 2 a.m.
Wow,
It's
okay.
really hard to have DIY spaces. There was a whole thing even when I was there where there was like a student documentary made about the DIY underground that made it very villainized and was all about like how bad and full of drugs and stuff it was. So then all these news channels covered it, and it became like this huge like police thing all of a sudden where things are getting shut down all the time. So in a small scene like that, like some little thing can make such a big difference. And I mean, that gets into a whole like how can you even like responsibly document and archive these things? But that's a vastly different topic. But
And do you feel like that sort of sentiment and that sort of kind of like public reaction also pushes artists towards scenes that maybe are more accepting or at least more connected already to the overall ecosystem?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I thought I would be in Boston forever. I was there for 10 years and I felt like it was a really nice, it was nice to be able to finally have the experience and capability to throw some like DIY parties and make something happen that felt like people really valued it. Sometimes in New York, throwing a party is like, there are like 7,000 parties a night. You don't really
Yeah.
necessarily always, you have to, if you see a need, you can fill it. Like, I think I am also a designer, like UX designer. So I feel like I tend to look at things from the perspective of like, what do people actually want or need from this? And sometimes in New York, I see parties where it's like, this is basically just someone thinks they need to be doing it for their career or they want a flyer for Instagram, but what is this party actually doing? Yeah, I feel like in a smaller scene in Boston, I felt like I could fulfill a need and had the experience and skill to finally do that after 10 years. But I reached a point where, I mean, first of all, I'm 34, so I'm a little on the older side probably in this room. And when I turned like 26, 27, you just couldn't be a weirdo in that city. Like, I felt like all my friends were like buying houses and stopping going out. And I was kind of like, I feel like an old weirdo now. But in New York, it's very intergenerational. And I just was like, I need to get inspiration for myself too. Like, I wasn't really moving to New York to make it myself in some way. I was more like, I want to be able to go out and gather inspiration and challenge myself and see new things too.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think I'm currently living in a city called Brno. It's the second largest city here in the Czech Republic, and there was a large period recently, especially attributed to COVID, where there wasn't anything happening in the city. And I think now one of the issues coming out of that time is also that a lot of young people are very ready for stuff to happen again, but a lot of people who have had these calm years, who maybe wouldn't necessarily be connected to the electronic music scene, they're really not ready for stuff to happen. And I think there's a lot of pushback within the city. I mean, just looking at the overall budget spent in the city, most of the money goes to classical music, classical initiatives. There's a large history of opera in the city as well. But there needs to be this kind of space found, I think, for other projects and other sounds that I'm not sure how ready the city is for that. I'm not sure if that's maybe similar to Boston. I know that there's a lot of institutions there, you think of the universities, but yeah, I thought of that at least when you were talking about that.
Yeah, that definitely sounds familiar to me. I think, yeah, just like, I mean, you see like Berlin, like these places that are actually defined as like a cultural institution in that city and how that shifts like the way that things can be funded and things like that. And then in the US in general, I think it's just really hard. Like maybe in bigger cities like New York, there are more resources, but yeah, it's really hard to find that kind of support. And so honestly, one of the kind of negative effects of that, I think, is like, when you're doing a party or an event or a label or something like that, like the money has to come from somewhere. And a lot of the time, like for a long time, I was working a tech job and I could kind of fund parties that way. And it didn't matter if I lost money. Now I'm not really working a full-time tech job anymore. Mm-hmm. So I have to kind of see the reality of like, I can't lose $500 on a party. So finding more collective ways to do that, finding ways to have some financial transparency and get people like understanding what the sliding scale can look like and things like that. It's like, it's all very challenging, but I mean, I think there are pluses and minuses because on the other hand, I went to a show with my friend in Berlin sometime last year and we were joking that it was a grant funded ambient show because all the music was so boring and like just very like uninteresting. I was like, yeah, this feels very like, this is just a gigantic funded thing where they have to deliver a certain package to a certain like institution or something. So I don't know. It's all kind of pluses and minuses to everything, I guess.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I actually wanted to ask someone from the Harmony label, maybe if they had any experiences with prog kind of within this realm of maybe public, I don't want to say backlash, but just resistance in general. And how that came to be, did people run off to larger scenes or was there kind of an effort to rebuild and continue?
Wow.
Sorry about the loaded question.
So, hi, this is Zygmunt from Harmony, and thank you for this question. I think the scene in Prague is very stable, and I'm really happy for that. And it's growing. There are plenty of new collectives who are huge friends with the old timers already, which is something that I really like, and something that I don't know much from, for example, the city of Brno, where we live together. So from that this is like the only point of view that I can provide, and I'm also very happy that we as Harmony, we were often or most of the time getting like warehouse spaces for our parties, and the negotiations about them with the city hall or with the private owners are often very easy, and are not disturbed by any officials usually, like 90%. And this last 10% are like minor fuck ups, let's say. And this is what I like, and I can say that for those 8 years that we are doing this thing, it's not getting harder. It's not getting like more difficult to find new places, and we don't feel any kind of suppression, like growing suppression or a police state, which I'm happy about. And it's definitely one of the top reasons why we are still doing this thing, because it's still possible in the way how we like to organize it.
And in terms of rising costs, because I feel like that's a topic that's very of the moment, you know, post-COVID years, there's not a lot of money floating around. How does that work in Prague? Is there grant money? Is it private funding?
We are trying to get a grant for at least 3 years or 4 maybe, or not really trying. Maybe there is like talking about it.
Oh, yes, we always talking about it. Never happened, unfortunately.
There is this
Hopefully
idea.
this year.
There is idea which was never realized, but maybe soon. But again, this is something we've been telling for the last 2 years. Maybe we will get a grant soon. If there is a, I would like to promise the guys that I will work my best on it, and let's see. But this is not a matter of me or them. This is like, you really need someone who understands the system and knows what to write and which amounts are real. You know, you can't ask for 250,000 of Czech crowns, which is like 10,000 euros. That is insane.
Yeah. But like to answer your question, we always funded the parties from our own pockets and from the budget of the parties, basically, as like we always tend to keep the money for future projects. And of course, you know, like right now, as everything got all of the materials like that's being used for the stage decorations, or even like the people that work at the parties, you know, everything is more expensive now, and therefore you need to sacrifice something. I mean, it's not easy, as like we used to spend insane amounts of money on
Yeah,
all of
it's
that, you know, and like we never really I mean, honestly, I really hate, you know, like saving on stuff, you know, and saving on people working at our parties. But right now we made it to the point when we actually really have to think and really like distribute the money wisely.
Yeah, the bill from the hardware store grew like, I don't know, 40%. That was something I was looking at last time, like a lot. And yeah, like everything else is coming with it when you are paying like 15 people who are working on the party, building the stage and cleaning the place and bringing the ideas. I mean, even their price rose. So that's the spirit.
And just kind of as a juxtaposition, pardon my English, I wanted to extend a question to Polygonia, Lini, and her experience in Munich, a city that I lived in quite briefly, but kind of understood right off the bat that it's a different sort of instance than in a lot of places. There's a lot of government money I wouldn't say readily available, but more available than in other locations. And how has your experience been with this sort of thing?
Well, I actually worked a lot with funding now, as we in Germany in general we have a lot. For example, also the Initiative Musik, which is like they did a lot for artists after COVID, for example, as they were doing this new start thing for artists. And for example, with my electric jazz trio, we I think it was like 25% of the whole price of your project you had to cover yourself, and the rest was covered by that funding organization. And yeah, I mean it's very handy because I think the whole thing was 12,000 euros. So imagine like 25%. It's still doable. Also, we were splitting it with the label, so it was really nice. And also for events, the thing is that the cultural institute for this doesn't have as much money as, for example, the social institute. So you have to be smart in order to apply for this money, because you have to know some tricks, like as you also mentioned that you have to know how to write stuff and everything. And also it's not really like you have to know that there's funding, because we were like doing a lot of stuff and not really events, but like many projects, and we didn't know of that. So at one point we got to know one person who is like fucking active in the Munich scene, and he's like always looking out for new places which are like empty, and then contacting the city or the company which owns the space and activates those spaces for like events and stuff. And that's why he knows like a lot of buttons to push, and only through him we began working with that. And I think if there's so much there, why don't you actually teach that also? Because I was going to a school, a musical high school, and I think especially like in institutions like that, you should actually tell the people who are like surely going to work in culture that there's something like that, because otherwise you're struggling all the time with money as well. But if you can have a very luxurious cultural life. I mean, not luxurious, but you can definitely fund some nice stuff, and pay people actually for their help and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And now, over the course of your travels, have you felt some parallels with a scene like that, or is it really kind of a one-off opportunity in a way?
Well, I think which is really special about Munich is that the scenes really mix up, because in other cities I feel like the acoustic music scene, for example jazz or classical music and stuff like that, band music, is a bit separate from the club culture. In Munich it's different, it's kind of connected, like because for example Blitz Club now, they since I think like 6 months or something, they started this new event series also, or event format, let's say like this, which is featuring concerts before the club night. And because also of the funding situation, there are more collaborations also between like those, I don't know, professionally trained musicians on the university and the subculture people who taught themselves. And this is also something very beautiful, because the people who went to university to learn their subject, they don't want to start like with zero money, like another person who just does it out of passion in their free time. It's a different model, of course. And otherwise they wouldn't mix that much, I think. But like this, new projects can emerge. And I think like parallels to this, I didn't see yet. I mean, like there are festivals where you have like both as well, like concerts and like electronic music, but they are always a little bit bigger. It's not like the small ones.
Yeah, there's experience kind of around that group of people, and yeah, so it really coming from an education perspective, there needs to be more access to these tools and kind of more common knowledge about where to access those resources
and how to do it also,
and how
because
to do
it's
it,
really you have to. I mean now I'm really, really happy because you can write things with ChatGPT. Whoa,
yes.
Shit, man,
because
this improves everything.
Is there a language component as well, right?
Yeah,
Do you
it's
have to
amazing,
write
yeah.
in a very high way to kind of like grasp the eyes of these politicians or these kind of like grant coordinators?
Exactly, yeah.
And that also isn't so accessible, right? unless you have some
Yes.
sort of an education background.
Yes, and also what I find, like, I don't know if I understand it from a certain perspective. Maybe not. Like one tiny bit, some percent maybe. But the Initiative Musik, for example, is like only in German, which I think like is a bit weird. Like why? Like they only accept German applications, and I think, for example, in Berlin, especially there, because in Munich, we already have funding through the city and everything. It works also like that. But in Berlin, you don't have that many fundings from the city. So those artists, and there are living many artists from like foreign countries and who moved there, and they cannot apply for that funding when it's only in German. So it's a little bit exclusive, I think.
I think it's an interesting dilemma about the music world and the arts world in general, where even if you go to an institution to receive your education, they don't necessarily provide you with the tools. And I'm speaking in very broad terms. I'm sure there are incredible professors out there that do. But in general, I feel like your education doesn't necessarily give you all of the tools that you need to act in the modern world. And then it's almost like a build your own school sort of situation where you then need to acquire that knowledge and then build it. And I wanted to bring this back to Kia and ask about the tools that you've needed to collect to work in the label world. And this is also a question that I'd like to pass to Harmony, because it's interesting how that's another situation where you have to build your own knowledge and build your own connections. And is there a book that you follow? Is there some YouTube tutorial? This, of course, there isn't. But how did you navigate that?
No, yeah, it's really interesting, like hearing the different perspectives, because they're all so different. But there's always this. It all comes back to the. Like, I think what the reason why all the people at this table are connected is because we all have a similar approach to like the sides of the scene that we're into, and we're all actually like really passionate about the community around it. But it's finding the balance between like your passion and also being able to like make it feasible to live off it and do it in a way that's fulfilling. And for me, like, it's funny because I'm a very like, I can't remember which side of the brain it is, but my brain does not work in like a business or mathematical oriented way whatsoever. I'm super like creative and illogical, or not rational in how I come to plan things. So I just kind of started the label as like a hobby, and it was just for fun, and then it just grew organically, and then I started realizing that there was responsibilities that came with that, and I still do it technically all on my own, but I'm still learning as I go. And I think, yeah, like it's really interesting to hear about Germany, because I've looked at even as Berlin as a place where and Munich even more so, hearing from your experience, like it's really cool that there's these opportunities, and there is some really cool like grants available and stuff in Australia as well. But it does, again, feel like this thing, like there needs to be, like, I've always felt inept of actually being capable of writing a grant application that's going to succeed. And I have some friends that are really good at it, and they've done really, like, they've managed to fund EPs and, like, releases from it. And I just, like, for one, can't find the time. But it feels like there needs to be more of, like, a... Yeah, it's so hard to say, because like institutionalizing this kind of thing, it's like it's you can't fully do it, because the reason why the scene is so beautiful and functions in the way it does is because it's kind of organic and flexible and kind of random, and trends happen and things like that. But it would definitely benefit from like some more structure and like lessons. Yeah, and I've honestly just learned on the job. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, because I now feel a responsibility to like the artists that I work with, and it's similar to what the Harmony Boys were saying about running the events. Like, I work within budgets of what the party is capable of doing, and like I started small, and because I run like parties associated with the label as well, and so it all kind of works. Like, the parties fund the releases, and also my DJing funds a lot of the label. So it all works together. But figuring it out was just like getting advice from friends in the scene who maybe worked for like more official agencies and things like that. And it's not super linear, it doesn't always work. Sometimes the parties are really successful, and then you get like almost not ambitious, but you're like complacent. You're like, okay, cool, that did really well. I can book an extra international or a performance artist or put more money into the lighting, and then you lose money on that party. So it's not like a and I'm not doing it. I'm not seeking money from it at all. I'm doing it because I'm passionate about it. But you, like exactly like Elise said as well, you have to break even to make it sustainable. But it's like balancing that with making sure that people are having a good time and enjoying it in the way that you want it to be enjoyed. Because for me, like the idea of anything becoming commercial is like the biggest ick. But we also live in a capitalist world, so money is involved. So, but yeah, I'm still learning different ways to do it all the time, and that's why this talk is really interesting, because everyone's got these like different perspectives into how they've approached it. So, even just having conversations like this is really useful.
Yeah, like for harmony, I think I can only agree because we cannot talk about business at all. Like we all know that in our bubble of the music industry where we are involved, and when you are running a label and doing like releases about hundreds of copy, you cannot talk about business. It's like you are happy that there is like that you are not in the red numbers, let's say. So yeah, I really think this is kind of hobby of all of us and kind of lifestyle and part of your life. And I'm super happy that our like label roster is full of international people, and each of the artists has like a different story how we got to know each other, and that's beautiful. Like and if I would talk about like selecting people we are cooperating, for example, like another crews from another countries, I think we are carefully selecting people we are working with, because I think there is some kind of empathy you need to have if you wanna do like long time cooperation. You know, like it's uh, it's just part of harmony that we are not doing one time events with someone. You know, there must be always something more. We are looking more into the future, more into our plans, and that's what I really like about our project, that it's there is a plan, you know, or is it always plan, you know, like
That we never really follow, but there is a plan. No, like especially because of that, I need to admit that we had kind of a hard time to find music for harmony lately, because we are also evolving in a certain way, and yeah, especially because what you said, like it's kind of hard to find people that are vibing with us, and it's not just like one time thing.
So, as a label, it's definitely a process to find artists who kind of produce within the realm of what you would like the label to present. But also, I'm wondering, and I wanted to ask you, Fred, about as an artist within the scene and now living also abroad, right? In Berlin as well.
Oh yeah.
Nice. How do you select labels, collective radios internationally, and are there any clues that these projects, prioritize the growth of artists, or it's I feel like it's scary nowadays because a lot of projects operate on a monetary basis.
Yeah,
And
but
and how
sorry.
yeah, sorry, just yeah, are there any clues
I,
that someone really is doing it for the art?
I think like you can like see instantly if it's not done by the heart, and like I think the vibe is very important, and that's something you can feel very quickly. No?
Like already from seeing kind of their presence online, or does this come through conversation?
I think like you can already get some hints from their online presentation, no? And of course, like once you meet someone, you immediately feel if it's working or not.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have my own opinions, but I'm interested to hear what other people are kind of thinking on that topic. I wanted to pass the mic to Linny actually to talk about this similar topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the most of the labels in our scene and our niche are definitely not money based, as we already mentioned. But what I think is sometimes also lacking in this DIY scene is that artists get their respect actually, because sometimes people just reach out to release their music because of their name or something, and this is like maybe not about money but like about reach and like appearing as a cool label. And I've already experienced like a few who are not even like showing the artwork, not like showing the master before like releasing it, not communicating the release date and stuff like that. You know, when you recognize that communication is not done properly and it's just like, here, that's the music, you know, then I think this is more a problem in our scene than like the money aspect, because yeah, everybody's doing it out of passion. Actually, with my label, Keone, which I founded last summer, I'm trying to maybe not lose that much money, because I mean, I really want to build something bigger, and I don't want to focus on records actually, because that's the aspect where you lose a lot of money. And I want to pay the artists instead, for example, more money, so that the worth is like coming from another side, and also highlighting the releases with specific concepts and things like that, like sound design concepts or like open calls and stuff you wouldn't do if you release records, because like an open call, releasing it on record, like this is crazy. Nobody would do this, you know, you will just lose money. And yeah, really, you know a guy, nice. Respect. Yeah, I mean, that's really cool, but I mean, most of the people don't, and most of the people search for big names, or even when they release their own music on record, they search for a big name for a remix so that it gets attention. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter if you release records or digital releases. I think it's really about like the thought which is put into it, like the concepts which come with it, and the spirit which the label has, and if it's like handled in some kind of professional way. Like professional can be many kinds of things, but I think the most important, definitely for me, is that the artist gets a lot of respect. For example, I've also played at radios where you don't matter as an artist. You just go there so that you feed your audio signal into it, and your name is displayed, and then you go. You know, I mean, it's cool, yeah, but I don't know, like I don't feel it. Like, you know, here, for example, we all sit together and we have a nice conversation. It's like about more than just the music, and I think that's also what I like a lot about like labels or other initiatives like this, parties and stuff. Yeah.
This is Elise again. Yeah, I think on the topic of kind of authenticity and like whose heart is really in it and stuff like that, it gets muddy in a way sometimes, because I do think, I think like something I've been thinking about lately is just like intentionality and what I actually want as an artist and how I want to evolve and how I want to like challenge myself and what I want to be doing. And I think when it comes to that, sometimes there is like a strategic side to it. Like I do parties. I started a label with my partner recently. I have like a zine series and stuff. And thinking about like the zine series, for example, which is also a mix and interview series, like I would love to just feature people who have never made a mix before or have no following, but there is a bit of a strategy in my mind of like, I have to feature some people who are a little bigger because it's not going to benefit the other people unless it's kind of like the remixers, I guess, too. Like you have to think a little bit. And I don't want to work with anyone who is just totally outside the scope of someone who I like know and trust to some degree, or who I feel like is fairly community minded, even on that greater scale. But it does get interesting. Like it's not so much like business techno mindset, but it's a weird, it feels strange sometimes to step back and be like, oh, what actually is the strategy or intention? And I think I personally can be a little guilty of just being like, I'm just going to see what happens and let it happen and it's going to be fun. But then stepping back and being like, oh, what am I actually doing with my time and energy? And yeah, I don't know. It's this is like my therapy topic, I guess. But Yeah, it's interesting. And I do think you can kind of get a sense for, I mean, I think even just through music, like you can kind of feel when someone is playing from the heart and when they're bringing in a lot of like different influences. Like I feel like if someone's playing a very like unilinear set that's just like one genre, very like focused, sometimes I'm like, oh, you're kind of just playing like your such and such set. Like this isn't really coming from the heart. Like you can kind of feel that. So I think you can get a sense through the music and through how people are involved. But yeah, it's a tricky topic.
Yeah, for sure. And flipping back to kind of the label side of things, I wanted to ask a tough and very honest question back to the Harmony guys. How did you first come across these artists that you have invited for your label night, and what drew you to them, I guess? To these particular artists that are sitting here with us and sharing their voices.
Uh, Sorry, that is something I wanted to talk about even within the previous questions and answers. That it's I think you ask like how do we choose people for our labels, and this is like getting back to it. And I think we have like very diverse stories with all the guests who are sitting here at this table. Because with Alice, for example, I was in touch on SoundCloud for quite some months, and since Alice is from the New York, it's obviously like very far, and like buying the flight tickets like just from our own is impossible. That would eat like most of the budget for the party. So you have to kind of wait until the person like goes at least somewhere close. So we've been in touch for quite some months, and now luckily it worked out that Alice was in Berlin, and I was checking the SoundCloud if there are some dates available for Europe, and it happened. With Lini, for example, the story is that I was quite digging her music back in the day when she was releasing quite a lot on the label they have with the collective of hers, which is called IO. They are all from Munich, and I'm super excited because most of them are coming very soon to party with us. And then Fred met her on some kind of festival, and they became friends, right?
Festival? Oh, Shotgun Festival. But no, I actually booked you before. You played at Wild with us, and you stayed the whole weekend with your boyfriend. Was amazing. So that was kind of our bonding moment.
And with Kia, I think Jan was chatting some silly stuff via Instagrams ever since like a year or two ago.
I think we actually like. I'd been following like I think for years we'd been following each other on SoundCloud, even when we were kind of into like more of a specific kind of music and following from afar. And it was, I don't know exactly what when we kind of connected, it was just like honestly SoundCloud. But that's, I think what's funny about all these connections is that they've all just happened like really organically when you're like going to the right parties, or you're in this like niche kind of like style of music. You're connecting with people that you can feel it, that they're like kind of their approach is similar, and it's not exactly the same. Like with, for example, running a label or a collective, like there's not one single approach that's right or that works, or there's not one like there's not a formula really, but I think we could tell that there was like an alignment between the parties. And then Jan, I think, suggested at some point because he suggested like, oh, if you come to Europe, like you should come play a party. And then my label started growing. But yeah, my label started growing, and then it made sense to kind of do it together, and it was really nice. We did like a collab event, and it was one of my favorite parties of last year. It was so fun, and it's really cool how that can happen. It was just like really organic.
Yeah, it starts with the music, I think, and then you just wait for a few weeks or months until you bump to each other at some kind of festival or a party, and then like it's own.
Yeah, and I feel like insanely blessed at the moment because I'm touring a lot, and I'm just like, especially because I specifically set a goal to play mostly events that I feel will align with my values and like what I want to do and things that I'll find fulfilling, aka like things with a bit of community behind them, and you meet people like no matter where you are in the world, they're all functioning within like different constraints, different governments, different situations, different clubs, environments, but the intention and if the passion is there, like they make it work in whatever way they can, and that's like what's really inspiring, I think, recently for me at least. That's been like motivating me a lot, learning a lot from different, even just this conversation is really cool.
Yeah, I think it never happened that we kind of didn't like each other when we got some new friends playing in Prague. Only thing that happened that they might like stop with their activities, so we don't see each other that often. But with the people who are active, we are in touch like all the time, I would say.
So it grows kind of naturally from that first point of interaction. Nice. SoundCloud. Yeah. Yeah. Turning over that stone, I guess. We talked a bit about SoundCloud. We talked a little bit about Discord. Talked a little bit about Discogs also. It was Discord, right?
Discord.
Yeah, Discord. Maybe also Discogs. I don't know. There some vinyl enthusiasts. But are these kind of these online meeting points, going back to that topic, how important are they for the overall health of the scene? How important are they for the modern music industry?
Honestly, I'm not sure like what's the situation these days, but from like the very beginning, like SoundCloud was the meeting point of literally like everyone. I'm still in touch until now, you know, like even my flatmate happened to know me from SoundCloud, and that's how it kind of worked out. That's ridiculous, but still, you know, like I consider myself as being a part of this old SoundCloud community. And I think like we spoke about it many times with other people, but like everyone was kind of like part of the small community, and like you still like remember the people's nicknames, or like still the same people commenting on still the same sets, you know. So like eventually like you get in touch. So I think I have no idea if it's still going on the same way as back in the day. I don't know, like if you guys have any experience. I'm not active anymore on SoundCloud. I mean, like of course I try to respond to all of the track IDs, but I'm not texting with people anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, I find it like super important. Like there's always been this icebreaker, you know, like just texting someone for track ID or something, and that's how it's been made. DJ Jan, maybe?
Well, so for me, like SoundCloud was always the source of great inspiration for, I don't know, let's say even I'm like taking care of Harmony podcast a lot. So yeah, I'm like digging a lot on SoundCloud, and I really like it. For example, with I remember with Joel Kenny, who is part of Harmony. Like it's years ago, and we were listening his recording or live recording there, and then all of a sudden I met him in Norway at the festival, and I was like, "Hey man, I really like your set from SoundCloud, you know." So like it's there. Like SoundCloud for me is a big thing, and yeah, I don't know. Like YouTube is not alive for me. Do you have different platforms? Yeah.
Yeah, I think actually, especially during COVID, you could feel how important it is to stay connected online. And for me, for example, I started my music project in 2018, and like I built it a little bit like over the 2 years until COVID. But I mean, it was all still small with our label and everything. But during COVID, it was so insane because everybody was in the internet, so it was really like a lot going on, you know, like everybody was watching because nobody was anywhere partying. And I think it was such a pleasurable moment when I was at this Monument Festival in Norway, like another edition. But yeah, because I met so many people. I just we texted a lot online, and it felt so surreal to finally like meet those persons. And I think it's so interesting to see how you can actually also grasp from the online presence, from the style, how they're writing, and what their musical taste is, how much you can already see that you like this person until you finally meet this person. And then also another example, which goes more in this Discord direction and beyond, is my friend Modio from Berlin. He opened a VR club, virtual reality club, and I was so impressed when I tried on his classes and visited the club and everything. It's so intense. Like, this scene is huge, man. Like, they also love our niche, which we are in. We are more in real life, but like for those people who live like in the countryside or like somewhere where nothing's going on, it's perfect. You know, it's so important for them to have a possibility to also have like an outlet, either on like SoundCloud or I don't know, not Mixcloud anymore, but maybe YouTube, and then also VR Club. Like, it's crazy. Also, I met like some guys at this VR Club, and then I met them at Monument Festival. Also crazy, right? You don't know the looking of this person. You only know this like character name, avatar name, and then this person looks totally different. Like, also since gender doesn't matter in VR, they are like all girls. Like, all the boys are girls. Everybody. It's crazy. I love it. It's amazing. So I think this is like the next step after social media somehow. Yeah.
My like slight downer addition to this topic, obviously I'm like I mentioned being kind of a chronically online person, and I've made a lot of really lovely connections through it, but I do think one of the like unfortunate downsides is that all of this is like platform capitalism, surveillance capitalism. Like, the companies that are running these truly do not care about any of us. And so I would love to see, I don't know what it even looks like, because obviously like the cost and infrastructure of these platforms is something I am not, capable of funding or owning. But yeah, it would be, I mean, thinking about things like when Facebook decided that Facebook pages have no reach anymore unless you pay for ads, then everyone is just like ruined. Or like when Elon Musk like buys Twitter and throws that down, it's like these things can happen. Or like even just like tweaks to the Instagram algorithm that we all are suddenly trying to adapt to have our stuff seen at all. I just would love to see like what alternatives can even come out of that. Because I mean, even something like Discord that people kind of think is innocent is also like a venture funded tech company. Like, it's just unfortunate that we're all so roped into this. And I guess the optimistic side is like, hopefully, I think people are starting to really see that, and maybe we can find more alternatives.
Yeah, there's still a necessity for these in-person interactions to really find the right people. Yeah, it's super true. And unfortunately, that's us. But thank you for everyone, and thank you for your words. Thank you for everyone. Great. Thank you for your words, and thank you for being here in this sweaty box. I'm really looking forward to the sets, and tomorrow. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. Friday night at Ankali Club here in Prague, Harmony Label Nights. Join us. Join us. What time does it start? 11. It starts at 11. It ends at noon, not the same day, the following day. And there are tickets at the door still available. So come and bring your friends. And next up we have Polygonia with a beautiful 50-minute set. So thanks so much.